it's a rather somber day, at the same time a very exciting day, and it's a huge celebration of democracy. When you think of when South Africans were first allowed to vote, and you saw those touching queues, lines and lines of thousands of people who've been there for days waiting to vote. It's so beautiful. The whole process is so uplifting, really.
And it looks like the turnout was high. We don't know for sure, but it looks like I'm getting reports around the country.
I think it
high
will.
turnout. That's encouraging.
It is very encouraging. But I must say, Andrew, I feel very uncomfortable because I never have my back to an audience. There's my audience. Quiet, please! Quiet, please! Nice to see you! To see you! I never have my back to the audience, you see. Sorry about that.
What do you think of the exit poll?
I thought it was, as you said, high. I think anything could happen. That's you sure you didn't write this blog, Andrew?
No, I did not.
Because it
looks like it's not a great night for Mr. Brown so far.
Well, I tell you, 3 things I did this morning. One thing I did not do, I'm so sorry, I did not vote strategically. I did vote with my head, and I did vote with my heart.
And you did a fourth thing. You came to our event tonight.
I did a fourth thing, which is probably the crown of the evening.
To see you. As you can see, the party's just getting underway. We'll be talking to you again soon. But for now, back to you.
Thanks, Andrew. Well, at Houghton and Sunderland South, at the count there, they're wildly counting, trying to beat their record or hit 10:43. They're saying now it's going to be a few minutes after that. The reason they're saying is because though they've been to all this trouble to measure the boxes and measure the weight of the ballot papers, they're fuller than they thought. In other words, there has been a higher turnout than they thought, and that may be why they're a bit delayed.
David, thank you. Well, I'm joined now from Hull, I believe, by Alan Johnson. Alan Johnson, can you hear me?
I can.
Excellent, good. Now, what do you think? Do you think you ought to think about conceding at this point?
No, not at all. No, not on the back of an exit poll. That shows, first of all, that the Conservatives' big society has kind of gone nowhere. Big flop. If that exit poll is right, and suggests, rather surprisingly, that the Lib Dems have fewer seats than now. So let's wait to see how this pans out. But it's hung Parliament territory. It's not conceding defeat territory.
So if it's hung Parliament territory, you have no problem with a deal. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Alan Johnson? We've obviously got to communicate. You are back again, are you? No, we've got a communication problem.
I never went away, Jeremy.
If it is... You can hear me then. So now listen, if we are in hung Parliament... Excellent. If you're in hung Parliament territory, you have no problem with trying to form some sort of deal with the Liberal Democrats?
I have no problem at all. Indeed, if the outcome of this election, if the will of the people is that no party has an overall majority, that's where grown-up, mature politicians have to be. I can't see the Lib Dems forming a deal with the Conservatives. I certainly can't see us forming a deal with the Conservatives, given that on the central issue of how we secure the recovery, we have so much in common, and given that on electoral reform, we have so much in common, and I'd be delighted to put before the British people a PR, AV Plus deal as well, and I think that really is the proper area to talk about. Yeah, I think we've got a lot in common, and we could come together on this. Let's see what the outcome is, but you know, it's been an intriguing, fascinating election, and it's still got a few more twists and turns.
But on that basis, we would rewrite the results of half the elections in the last 30 or 40 years, wouldn't we?
Why? Look, the simple fact is, no party's got an overall majority.
Hang on a second. By your logic, it was an anti-Labour majority in 2005.
No, well, you're talking about proportion of the vote. We don't know that yet. We know about seats. First past the post depends on seats. And we're told that the virtue, the single biggest virtue of first past the post, is it delivers strong governments. I mean, the fact that it disenfranchises people and it's a miserably disempowering system, we're supposed to put up with that because it gives us strong government. Well, it hasn't. It hasn't, and I think, you know, there is a real will amongst the British people to say, let us decide, give us a say in our electoral system. They've never had a say in it, unlike voters in Ireland and France and Germany. British electorate have never had a say in the system by which they transfer their vote to political power. and it's time to do that.
OK, Alan Johnson, thanks very much indeed. Well, Theresa May, Peter Mandelson and Ed Davey are still with us. Who's won this election, then?
That's a very good question. I mean, without wishing to sound glib, the public seem to have won the election. I mean, they seem to have given us...
wishing not to sound glib.
Well, I didn't want to sound glib. But, I mean, the public have given, on the basis of the exit poll, and let's just enter that caveat.
Sure, okay, it's just
all
an
the
exit
time,
poll.
because we haven't had one single result from an actual constituency.
Okay.
They have given a result, they've given an outcome, rather, on the basis of the exit poll, which says we don't want a pure Labour government. Obviously, they feel we've had a good innings, but they also seem to be having profound misgivings about a Tory-only government as well.
Ed Davey, this raises very interesting questions for you, because Nick Clegg has said whichever party gets the largest number of seats has the right to try.
Indeed,
Do you endorse that view?
Yes, he
The
said
right
that.
to try to form a government if they've got the largest number of seats.
He talked about the mandate in terms of seats and votes. We haven't had anything about the vote share yet, but clearly, if a party has the largest number of seats and the largest number of votes, the convention, I'd have thought, would be that they have the right to try to form a government. Nick's been clear about that throughout the campaign.
Theresa May, who do you think's won? Don't say the public.
Don't be glib.
Fancy that, Lord Mandelson saying don't be glib. All the caveats about the exit poll, but I think what we see from this vote, if that is going to be correct, if that's the way things are going, is a clear vote for change, a positive vote for change from the British people. And that's why I think what we're seeing in that exit poll is a vote that Conservatives coming out potentially with the largest number of seats, because it's the one party that has actually really put forward a mandate for change and showing how we would actually change the way this country is governed.
You guys try and hang on to Downing Street, it's going to look like a coup, isn't it?
I don't think so, no. Look, I think the answer, the explanation for this lies in the YouGov tracking question about attitudes to a Conservative government. Throughout the entire campaign, never more than 25% have said they would be delighted at the prospect of a Conservative government. And never fewer than 35% have said that they're anything other than dismayed at the prospect of a Conservative government. And I think what you're seeing is, yes, people are voting for change, but they're not absolutely sure what change it is that they want, and they're certainly not sure they want to change to a Conservative government governing alone.
How are you going to play this now? Should this... sorry, I'm being told I've got to hand back to you. David.
Oh, Jeremy, that's nice of you. I don't know why you had to hand back in such a hurry, but anyway, interesting to hear Lord Mandelson saying that the public have said they don't want a pure Labour government, whatever a pure Labour government is. Anyway, we're waiting for Houghton and Sunderland South. Now, it's going to be a bit slower than we thought. It should be 10:49 that we get it. It's 10:42 now, so there are a few minutes to go. And remember, we've got just this exit poll that we've all been talking about since we went on air nearly an hour ago. Sophie, do you think we're going to get 10:49? Is that going to be about right? Because it will give us the first idea of whether there's any reality to the exit poll, even the scant information that comes from Houghton.
I think they're hoping to do it faster if they can. They're all gathering there, the candidates.
Right, well, they're gathering there. Anyway, we will go back there at the moment as soon as we can. Let's just have a look at the concept of the swing and the swingometer, the number of people who've switched their views since the last election and how this affects the outcome. Jeremy, can we do that?
First of all, here's a map of the UK as it was coloured in the 2005 general election, and we'll recolour it, obviously, as we get all those results in. We'll take a look at the swingometer. It's basically a very simple device that shows the effect of voters switching sides since the last general election. We have a Lib Dem swingometer for you very shortly, but the principle is this: if you have 100 voters and 5 of them go from Labour to the Conservative, that is a 5% swing from Labour to the Conservative. So let's have a look at our swingometer here, and you can see the seats, the blue seats, Conservative seats coloured in 2005 at the last general election. And then on the other side, the red seats, Labour seats, won last time as well. And at the central pivot, you see a 0% swing would simply leave them all in the same position. Now, the exit poll suggests that the swing to the Conservatives nationally is 5.5%. So you can see them taking, under the exit poll, we obviously have to add that caveat, seats like Gedling and Lincoln and Dewsbury and so on, but not quite as many as they need for the overall majority. They need about 7% nationally for an overall majority. If we just take a look at these seats in England, I'll just isolate the English seats on the swingometer. Something very interesting that's coming out of the exit poll is this, that the swing to the Conservatives in England is higher. It's about 7%. Now, bear in mind, they did very well in England in the 2005 general election. To swing a further 7% takes some doing. But further to that, the exit poll is suggesting there may have been a swing to Labour in Wales and Scotland, just a small swing against the Conservatives of 1%. So that may be part of this result as well. I promised a Liberal Democrat swingometer. Let us take a look at the Lib Dem swingometer here and see what it tells us about the battle with the Conservatives. Because, of course, part of the story of the campaign was the surge, the so-called surge for the Lib Dems that happened after the television debate, and then the question about whether Nick Clegg might fight off the Conservatives successfully in lots of seats. Well, the surge has ended up like this, according to our exit poll. Lib Dem Conservative battles, just a small swing to the Conservatives of 2%. So maybe the Liberal Democrats effectively blocking the Conservatives in some of the seats they wanted to take. Bit too early to be certain of that. It all comes from the exit poll. It's fascinating. David.
Jeremy, thanks very much. There are 13 Tory targets in London, seats which, if they were to make that 116 gain, given 326, they would need to have. Now, Martha Carney is in Wandsworth tonight, and there's one of the seats there. Martha.
Hi, David. Well, we don't have any schoolboy athletes running in with the ballot boxes, but counting is firmly underway in this area, which has received a huge amount of political attention. It was just down the road at Battersea Power Station where David Cameron launched his campaign. And I think in these seats here, we'll get a very good indication of how the party is doing nationally. First of all, there's a seat of Battersea, which Labour only held on to by a whisker in 2005, by 163 votes. The Conservatives hope it'll be their first gain from Labour of the night. We hope to bring you that result at 12:30. Much more of a challenge will be Tooting. Now, it's here that the Conservatives say they hope to decapitate a Labour minister, obviously not literally. That's Sadiq Khan, the Transport Minister, who also sits in Cabinet. The Conservatives have a challenger there, a candidate who describes himself as one of the new breed. He was born in a council estate, and he is somebody who very much sees himself as being a very different kind of Conservative. But they'll need to take that seat. They need a swing of 6.1%, which is the kind of area that they're looking at if they want to gain power nationally. And then finally, Putney, rising star in the party, Justine Greening. One of the big moments of 2005 was when she won, so she certainly hopes she will hang on to it. So it should be a fascinating night here in Wandsworth.
Martha, thank you very much. Well, now, Torbay in the West Country is a seat that's held by the Liberal Democrats, and the result there may give us our first indication, because it's a fairly early declarer, of how the Liberal Democrats have done, whether things have gone as badly as the exit polls suggest. Anyway, Zainab Badawi is there tonight. Zainab.
Yes, well, David, this is a key test of just how strong the Liberal Democrat vote is after that Clegg surge, and also just whether the Conservatives are going to win this seat, because it really is a very marginal Liberal Democrat seat here in the southwest, and the count is underway. All the ballot boxes are in, a very sedate affair compared to what was going on in Sunderland. Now, the incumbent Adrian Sanders has held this seat for the last 13 years, since 1997. His majority is about 2,700, which means the Conservatives could win it if there was a swing of 3%. And Marcus Wood, their candidate, I'm told that they are quietly confident. And so this would actually be very, very significant if the Conservatives do manage to wrench this away from the Lib Dems.
Zainab, thanks very much. You have an idea, by the way, when we'll get that? You say around midnight or after?
Well, we were hoping it would be about midnight 30, but actually I'm told that it could be more like 1:30, possibly as late as 2 a.m. So a bit of a wait.
Thanks very much, Zainab. There is a delay in a lot of these counts. It's partly postal ballots that have to be opened and verified, signatures verified, and last time there were about 15% of the electorate voted postally. This time it's thought to be rather more than that. But also, a lot of these places also have local council elections. So the ballot papers have actually got to be separated before they can start that business of counting. Anyway, what do you think we should be looking for in Sunderland?
Well, we're going to look not for the final outcome in Sunderland, because we're pretty sure it will be a Labour victory, but it'll give us a sense of whether our exit poll is right. It'll be interesting on turnout as well, because when we're hearing that some of these counts are being delayed, David, it is further confirmation that there are a large number of people who voted, including many people, it seems, who've not been able to vote. We're getting reports from Sheffield, as we heard in our news bulletin, of people queuing to vote and having the doors slammed in their face.
Extraordinary.
Quite without precedent, in my knowledge at least. I'm seeing reports in Manchester as well of people in large numbers, I don't mean 2 or 3, but a couple of hundred in Manchester, Withington I believe, who wanted to vote and couldn't, who've arrived late, got in the queue and not got through the door. Now, of course, if there are close results, this opens the possibility of legal challenge to this. The returning officers will no doubt say this is absolutely the letter of the law, is that they close the doors on the dot at 10 o'clock. But
you remember, they were talking earlier on about South African elections. When they had the first election in South Africa, they kept the polling for another day or two in order that everybody who wanted to vote should.
That's right. And at a time...
How can it be that they can't get everybody through? I don't understand.
It can only be that many, many more people have decided to vote late than anyone expected, and that has just taken them by surprise. They've not been ready for it.
Sophie, how's the race going? 10:50 now.
I think it looks like we could be almost there. They're way off their target, though. They wanted to declare by 10:43, and they're almost closing in on 10 minutes over that. I've been talking to the Labour candidate there, Bridget Phillipson. If she wins, she is going to become possibly the second youngest MP. She's only 26 years old. She says she is very nervous. Here they all come. I'm not sure she has any reason to be.
We'll be highly relieved to have one result in Houghton and Sunderland South. Labour majority of 17,000 last time.
I'm ready to declare the results of Houghton and Sunderland South. I, Dave Smith, Acting Returning Officer, hereby give notice that the total number of votes for each candidate for the Houghton and Sunderland South constituency is as follows. Karen Allen, British National Party, 1,961. Christopher Peter Boyle, Liberal Democrats, 5,292. Richard Peter Elvin, UK Independence Party, 1,022. Robert Jeffrey Oliver, Conservative Party candidate, 8,147. Bridget Phillipson, the Labour Party candidate, 19,000. Colin Wakefield, Independent, 2,462. And that Bridget Phillipson has been duly elected to serve as member for the said constituency.
So Bridget Phillipson, 26-year-old, formerly at Oxford, chair of the Labour Club there, manages a women's refuge, is the first elected MP for the new Parliament. Here are the figures. And we'll have a look at the share and the change in a moment. But there are the raw figures. Labour on 19,137. She's down just over 10% from last time. Robert Oliver, 8,147. He's up by about 5%. We'll see the figures exactly then. The Liberal Democrats in third place. And Colin Wakefield in fourth place, and the others, that's how they break up. The BNP in green there, 1,961. So let's just see the share of the vote. And some of these constituencies, most of them, these shares are based, of course, on today, but when we compare them, we're comparing them not with 2005, because so many of the boundaries have changed, some of them radically. We're comparing them with what's called the notional result in 2005, i.e. what the figures would have been had the election been fought on these boundaries back in 2005. There's the share, and here's the change since last time. Labour down 12 percentage points, Conservatives up 5, Liberal Democrats down 1 percentage point, disappointing for them, Independents up 7, the BNP down 2, and it's a swing from Labour to the Conservatives, 8.4%. So let's have a look at that in some detail, can we, Emily?
Yeah, let's break this down going into Houghton for you. And as you've seen there, what has happened is that Conservative share of the vote has inched up, so more recognition for the Conservatives there. The Lib Dems, interestingly enough, slipping there. I'm not sure that they would have expected that. And although the Labour vote down that 12%, they've still got this huge majority. It started off as a 23% swing to take this Conservative. That was never really going to happen, Peter.
Emily, you're right, the Conservatives were never going to win this. This swing is certainly consistent with the exit poll. If anything, it's slightly bigger than one would have expected, although Houghton and Sunderland South does have a new Labour candidate. As you were saying earlier, the swing does seem to be higher where Labour has a new candidate in Labour-held seats. The Liberal Democrats down 1 point. That's certainly consistent with the exit poll, which is finding nationally they're not much different. However, I would say two things. Firstly, turnout is only up about 2 percentage points. We think it's up quite a lot more in the really seriously contested seats. Yeah, turnout 55%, just up 2%.
I mean, this is relatively low. I mean, in the country, this is a pretty low turnout.
It's low, and I think the turnout will be up more in the really contested seats. And as a result of the higher turnout, the swings may be different. But so far, there's nothing here which says our exit poll is wildly wrong.
Peter, thanks very much. A certain triumph to getting the first result. And of course, you can follow your own constituency on the website bbc.co.uk/election to find out what's going on where you are, or indeed the national picture as it emerges. David.
Thanks very much, Emily. We'll be reporting not just from with the party leaders and all that. We'll also be looking at regions of the country. We'll be looking at the different nations. We'll be paying particular attention to them. And we'll be looking at Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland could be very important if it's a very close thing, because of the number of MPs who may be returned from Northern Ireland who will support, or might be minded to support, a Conservative administration. Mark Simpson is there. Mark, good evening, and can you give us any indication, first of all, when we're going to get results from you in Northern Ireland, and secondly, what the mood of the voters is?
I'd be surprised, David, if we get any results before midnight. I can tell you, though, that the Democratic Unionist Party, Ian Paisley's old party, now led by Peter Robinson, is very excited by the exit poll. It, of course, got 9 seats last time. 9 seats could be very handy for a would-be Prime Minister tomorrow. And already a senior member of the Democratic Unionist Party, Arlene Foster, when quizzed on BBC Northern Ireland about what would happen if you get to Westminster next week and you bump into David Cameron, well, she said, we'll not be running to David Cameron, he'll be coming to us. And another senior member of the party that I spoke to off the record said, Westminster's difficulty is Ulster's opportunity. So Unionists here getting very excited. The one last thing, of course, David Cameron's easiest way to win seats in Northern Ireland is for his partnership with Sir Reg Empey's Ulster Unionists to produce some seats. Well, at best they can hope for 4, but there's actually at this stage no guarantee that they're going to get any. We'll wait and see, as I say, sometime after midnight.
Yes, Mark, just very briefly, what kind of deal would they be looking for? More money for Northern Ireland? What would it be?
The quote I was given was first and foremost finance. The 3 Fs. It's going to be protection of the finance that Northern Ireland gets, that multi-billion-pound block grant, and some other sweeties for those at Stormont as well.
So that would be at the expense of the rest of the United Kingdom, of course, if it happened.
Well, they will be arguing that Northern Ireland has special circumstances because of the Troubles and everything, but as we know, all politics is local, and Peter Robinson would be saying to a would-be Prime Minister, if you want us, you're going to have to pay a pretty high price, and George Osborne, or whoever it is going to have to dig pretty deep into his pocket.
Well, everybody thinks they're a special case. Let's go down to Wales and join Sian Lloyd, who's there. Sian, good evening, and can you give us again an idea of how things are going, what the issues are, and when you expect results to come through?
Good evening to you. We don't expect any results here either before midnight. I mean, the earliest results that we expect are up in the north, perhaps the Vale of Clwyd around 1 o'clock in the morning, and Ynys Môn also at 1 o'clock in the morning. And actually, those two seats will be seats that we will be watching very, very carefully, because the Vale of Clwyd is one of the top targets for the Conservative Party here in Wales. And Wales has traditionally been Labour. However, it had 29 seats last time round in 2005 out of the 40 constituencies being contested here in Wales. However, in the 2007 Assembly elections, the local elections the following year, and then the European elections last year, the Labour vote has slid. They've had a hammering here, and they're going to look to see if they can stop that slide. However, the Conservatives really feel that they can make gains here. The Vale of Glamorgan and Cardiff North, which is being counted in the building where I am tonight, top target seats for them, only a 2% swing required for them to take those from Labour, and also seats in the northeast of the country, the Vale of Clwyd, Clwyd South and Delyn, a higher swing required here, but these seats were blue in the 80s and are the type of seats that David Cameron is going to have to take if he is going to be in power.
Sian, thank you very much indeed. Let's go to Edinburgh now and join Alan Little. 59 seats in Scotland. And what do you think they'll be looking out for tonight in Scotland when they see this exit poll and speculate on whether there's going to be a hung parliament, Alan?
Well, Labour's defending 41 of those seats, and it looks like, from the Labour point of view, Fortress Scotland has held up very well for them, resisting the onslaught both from the Liberal Democrats and the Scottish National Party, which is the main challenger to Labour here, and certainly from the Conservative Party. There are a few interesting marginals. One being counted below me, Edinburgh South, where the Labour Party are defending a majority of just a few hundred. I think the Liberal Democrats have long been confident of taking that, possibly Edinburgh North and Leith as well. But the interesting question is where this leaves the Scottish National Party, who will still be in government tomorrow morning in Scotland, regardless who wins in Westminster. Alex Salmond went into this election saying that he wanted to win 20 seats. That would have been nearly double the maximum they've ever held in the past in their history. That turned out to be a bit of a hostage to fortune. They have an enormously steep mountain to climb. By the time you look at their third target seat of Kilmarnock, they're asking for a swing of 10% or more. So it looks as though they will be under pressure in some of their existing seats. They want to take a couple of seats in central Scotland. But if they had had 20 seats, that would have put them in a very strong position if this exit poll were correct. But it doesn't look like it's going to work out for them.
Alan, thank you very much indeed. You may have noticed at the top of the screen, 326 to win. That's an overall majority in the new House of Commons. And the three colours, Labour in red, of course, with the one seat from Houghton and Sunderland South. Let's rejoin Jeremy Paxman.
Well, we're joined now by Douglas Alexander, who played a key role in the Labour campaign and is very close to the Prime Minister, Gordon Brown. Douglas Alexander, if these figures in the exit poll are borne out in reality, you're not really going to try to cling on to power, are you?
Well, it's very early in the evening. Let's wait and see whether the numbers that the BBC are projecting turn out to be the people's votes cast in individual constituencies. But it is clear that you need to command a majority in the House of Commons, so let's wait and see which party is able to secure that majority in the House of Commons.
But this is potentially a worse result for you than at any time since the 1980s, 1983, for example.
Well, let's wait and see. It's always going to be tough securing a fourth-term Labour government. I think we've only had 2 fourth-term governments in 200 years in the United Kingdom. And if the numbers are borne out, and that's a big if, we'll lose some very valuable colleagues this evening. But if we've learned anything in this most unpredictable of elections, it's to take our time and not to presume ahead of events. So let's just wait and see how the individual seats play themselves out. My sense is there may be less regional variation than people was expecting, but more variation between the seats than anybody anticipated. So it's going to come down to individual races and individual communities. Let's wait and see how it turns out.
Indeed, we will see. But if you do not get a majority of the votes, the people have clearly, decisively rejected Gordon Brown. You can't have him hanging on in number 10 as some sort of squatter, can you?
Let's wait and see what the results are. I mean, I'm conscious that the Conservatives were, 22 points ahead of Labour in the opinion polls just a few months ago. Even before this election was called, the expectation was the Conservatives would secure a clear majority. If your exit poll is right, then actually what we've seen in the course of the campaign is support falling for the Conservatives. Of course, I'm not satisfied with the projected number of Labour seats, but ultimately, let's wait and see where we are in a few hours' time.
But you're not willing to concede even if you don't get the most seats.
Well, ultimately, you need to be able to command a majority in the House of Commons, and it will be for us to decide, along with every other party, what is the best way forward if these results play themselves out. I have a sense that even if the Conservatives don't get across the winning line, of course, Conservative supporting newspapers and commentators will be keen to give them the result anyway. But under the British Constitution, you need to secure that majority in the House of Commons, and let's therefore see where we are in a few hours' time.
OK, let's see. Theresa May, what do you make of that sort of talk?
Well, I find it absolutely extraordinary. If that exit poll turns out to be correct, and in fact what we've just seen from the Houghton and Sunderland result was that actually was a bigger swing to the Conservatives than the exit poll was suggesting. But if these figures are the sort of figures that are going to come out tonight, there's a clear rejection of Labour. And the idea that having had their worst result since 1931, the Labour government could somehow try to desperately to cling on into office at a time when trust in politics is at such a low point, I think people would look very, very warily at that and think that was quite extraordinary for a Labour Party to try and do that.
Thank you very much. David.
Jeremy, thank you very much. I'm joined here by Vernon Bogdanor, who's Professor of Government at Oxford University, who's just passed me a message about the Houghton and Sunderland South result.
If that swing of 8.4% is repeated across the country, it will give the Conservatives an overall majority. We will not have a hung parliament. That may or may not be a significant result. It's a safe Labour seat, but it also shows that perhaps the prediction about the Liberal Democrats may be right, that they're doing less well than in 2005. A very disappointing result for them. But as I say, it's only one seat.
Okay. And you've got news about one polling station stayed open or something?
Continuing news about the confusion about people trying to vote. In Sheffield, we know 4 polling stations were closed and there have been apologies. But one of our camera crew has been told that at Lewisham, that the returning officer agreed to keep the polling station open an extra half an hour in order to allow those people to vote. Meanwhile, in Manchester Withington, apparently almost 200 people had denied vote. I'm getting text messages from friends who tried to vote and could not vote. I think there was already controversy about our electoral system. This will hardly help.
Okay. Let's have a look at this election a different way. Emily has these maps coloured in showing, what's Labour, what's Liberal Democrat and all the rest of it, which of course give a very weird picture, as she'll explain.
Yeah, absolutely
Weird
right.
and
As my
wonderful.
team is focusing on that fine detail that's emerging from these initial counts, I want to contrast the way the country looks now with what it might look like at the end of the night. And this is the way we voted nationally, constituency by constituency. But at a first glance, it looks as if the Conservatives won that election. Why? Well, because Conservative MPs tend to have these rather large rural constituencies, seats like Penrith and the Border or Ludlow, Dorset West there. The Lib Dem success also magnified by these large rural areas in the north of Scotland, central Wales as well, whereas Labour MPs tend to be clustered around these dense urban conurbations. I'm thinking of Glasgow or Manchester, Birmingham, London. It's very hard to see just how many seats there are on this map. So what happens if I modify the map to give you a more accurate picture of what actually happened last time round? I'm going to make every single constituency the same size hexagon, and now you get a sense of what really happened there. London magnified on this map, and really the Conservative successes kept from this bottom half of the country here, very little movement up here, just 1 seat in Scotland, just 3 seats there. That's really why Labour won. You can see much more clearly now. If I take us back to 1974, the last time we were in this position of a hung parliament, Heath unable to form a majority government, you can see there what was going on. More blue, but certainly much less of the Liberal Democrats, the Liberals as they were then, but a huge number of seats here in Scotland. 21 seats there. They've only got 1 now, remember. And look at what's happening here, 8 seats in Wales. So really, the Conservative successes confined to this part of England, Wales and Scotland there. This is what we're waiting for tonight. Looking a bit lonely there, that 1 result in, but it'll be very interesting to see which kind of shape emerges if it is indeed a hung parliament. David.
Thanks very much, Emily. The exit poll has been revised. Not much comfort to anybody that it has been, but here it is. Just a slight change. The Conservatives now on 305. That's 2 fewer seats. and up 95 from the last election. Labour on 255 still, that's the same. And Liberal Democrats are up 2 on 61. So that puts them -1 from last time. And the Conservatives short, I make that short by 21 seats. Right. Oh, yes.
Well, we're going to talk again and again about this winning line of 326. That,
Yes.
strictly speaking, is the majority you need. The reality is a little bit less than that. Sinn Féin MPs tend not to turn up, and they never have in the past. You can govern with ad hoc deals with the Ulster Unionists if you're the Conservatives. So they will be happy with anything that approaches 310 or above. They believe it's possible to govern with less than that.
And of course, we haven't talked about the Ulster Unionists, which no doubt will come into play. The queues outside, it's quite extraordinary, these scenes. Look at this in Leeds, queues of people who were unable to vote, waiting to go and vote. It's a disgrace, this, isn't it? It's really a disgrace.
It is really shocking to see.
Particularly since they've had so many more people doing postal voting, you'd think there'd be plenty of room. And so look at that.
It's both at one and at the same time, isn't it? Very exciting to see the desire to vote, but the thought that in this country, in a democracy, people could want to vote and not be able to will cause fury.
It's third world politics. It's badly done, and there ought to be an inquiry about it, because it's an absolute disgrace. Pictures in Ealing now, not just in Leeds, in Ealing as well. And as Nick Robinson was saying, his friends failed to vote. You should have got up out of bed earlier, Nick. Let's go down and join Andrew. Andrew, were you able to vote, or were you, perhaps he was queuing to vote too?
No, I didn't have to queue, but there were a lot of people